Alan Quinlan. Good morning to you.
Morning.
How's it going?
Good, thanks, yeah.
The newspapers, you're just making the valid point, the newspapers stocked full of rugby this morning. So listen, that's this morning's conversation. Thanks a million for coming in.
I'm off.
We've just been chatting to Nathan there, who's been behaving himself in Copenhagen ahead of the game tonight. We've had somebody in touch here saying, just on the back of his comment about, our comments about whether Ireland should be thrilled with a draw in Copenhagen, we've had the hospital pass in touch on Twitter to say that since when did Irish journos start behaving like English hacks? A draw in Denmark would be a good result. Anything to the contrary is nonsense. Let's not forget Wales are the only significant team that we've beaten away since we beat Scotland in 1987. Estonia playoff 2011 not including. I mean, I
was pretty happy after we won in Vienna.
Clearly, like a victory tonight would be fantastic, but like a draw will do absolutely just fine, right?
Yeah,
like,
100%.
It'll be a good result. I think it'll instill it's the type of draw. We can't be fussy here, you know. But if they get if they get a draw with the negative approach again, a lot of the Danish players and the manager has been, they've been pretty disparaging and disrespectful. I think disrespectful. But I suppose when you talk about the opposition in any sport and you mention maybe a negative style of play, and the problem for Ireland is, can they go out and cut them apart and do something different? Probably not. They were positive, really positive the way they played against Georgia. So hopefully they go and they didn't actually set the world on fire themselves in the World Cup. They did Denmark, So
what you wouldn't have had a huge amount of churn of different head coaches over your time, over your career, but in terms
I had a few in Munster.
For different teams, maybe. Yeah, okay. So what was that? Obviously, the new broom of Mick McCarthy and the positivity Nathan was talking about, the honeymoon period, whether he accepts it or not, is probably about to come to an end tonight. Well, depending on what happens. What's the how does that dynamic work in terms of a new manager coming in? Like, we've heard some of the players this week talking about pointed barbs essentially at some of the stuff that's gone before, but there is an uplift clearly in a new guy coming in with a new way of doing things. Whether it's right or wrong at the minute probably doesn't really matter. It's something new.
It brings positivity and it brings a bit of energy because people try and impress, and they want to. Some guys maybe who felt that they weren't getting a chance or weren't getting involved, or maybe some of the information, if it's more detailed, and so you've got to hit the right notes with the players and make them believe that everybody's got a good chance here, and it's the kind of information you provide to them. I
presume it works the other way as well. That players are like, geez, I better make sure that this guy.
Yeah, a little bit, and there's a chance, and that's why they call it the honeymoon period, because if it's after a few months, if results are going bad, if guys are not getting picked, people start giving out behind the scenes, players get a little bit negative and drop the heads a little bit. So that can happen too. It's who'd want to be a manager in any sport. It's great when things are going well. And to be fair, Martin O'Neill and Roy Keane, there was a fair bit of pessimism and criticism about the results and the way they played and stuff. Small margins, a few different results, and it's all positive, So for Mick McCarthy, I think I would imagine that the Irish public we understand our limitations, but I think if there's more of a positive attacking approach and you're kind of giving it more of a go and there's a bit of shape to the structure and stuff, I think people will accept that. I don't think any of us expect this Republic of Ireland team to be setting the world alight, but I think the approach, and I had Ray Houghton on breakfast this morning, and I was kind of interested in that point of the negative approach and frustrating approach that the Danish players are speaking about, and then the positive and enthusiastic approach against Georgia. Somewhere in between would be good, that we're still having a go, but we're still frustrating the life out of the opposition, because that's part and parcel of it, and you cut your cloth according to your measure and stuff. So changing managers, and I think it's just the information. Look at Joe Schmidt when he came into Leinster first, 4 or 5 bad results the first few games, and there's people calling for his head, and then so you can change it around as well. So a couple of positive results at the start can mirror,
of course,
actually what's going to happen for the future, and it can work both ways. But look, they seem to be happy. They seem to. Shane Duffy was talking about it this week about them focusing on themselves more than the opposition, and hopefully they can get a draw there.
It's kind of reminiscent of John Mitchell's comments before the Six Nations this year when he's like, Ireland are going to bore the shit out of us.
You're taking a chance, aren't you? You're taking a chance, and if you back it up, then it's great. It worked. The psychology worked, and you don't. It doesn't have often that. It doesn't happen that often in rugby, because even if you're playing, you know, a much better side, a more skillful side, you can still kick the shit out of them for that, and you can nearly influence the physical side of it a lot more in rugby, where you can actually just really go after somebody physically if they've said some disrespectful remarks. Ireland can't go out tonight and kick the crap out of the Danes and get away with it because somebody will get sent off. You can be physical, but it's a pressure thing. I think it's more pressure in football, isn't it? It's that pressure. And
who was the coach that you got the best bounce off that came in initially, that sort of brought that vibrancy or enthusiasm that was nothing necessarily to do with anything that happened after that, but that initial bounce?
I think probably Declan Kidney was there first in Munster, and so he was there for a good number of years, then left. Then Alan Gaffney came in with a lot of new ideas and more attacking. Like when Declan took over, it was like trying to piece all this professional group together. Some guys were amateur, some guys were professional. It was just a mess, and with the early couple of years was just trying to get a bit of solidity. And I think as the game changed and developed, when Alan Gaffney came in 2003-04 season, 2002-03 season, Declan and Niall O'Donovan went to the World Cup. I think he came in with kind of a freshness, more of an attacking approach, more of a skills-based approach, an emphasis on lines of running and evasiveness and stuff. And it was kind of, there was a lot more emphasis put on that stuff, which was kind of good, and that gave a real kind of surge in excitement, because, you know, for me anyway, as a back row player, I like to throw the ball around a little bit. And then Declan came back, and, you know, we ended up winning another European Cup, or first European Cup, and that was incredible because he kind of knew the culture of the players. We'd evolved, we'd got better over the years from a skills point of view, and then, you know, so I think every one of them each time, and then Tony McGahan, who was already assistant coach when he took over, again, you know, you have new ideas, new approach. And I always liked that. I liked that excitement of a little bit of change in the setup, whether it be, you know, because we were split into two camps. The different days and stuff would change up, and some resistance to that sometimes, whether we're going to Cork on Tuesday, Wednesday, Monday, reviews, when they take
Madness
place.
in hindsight, isn't it?
There was a lot of stuff going on. There was a lot of movable parts to that whole Munster group, but you know, you always get a bit of a kick. I always found, you know, that scenario of trying to impress, and then a few months down the line, you're like, I hate him if he's not picking me. Or if the approach or if the game plan is not what you agree with. But that's why senior players in a group are important to any coaching ticket. But so it's always intriguing when you see new people taking over, because you can't just go in carte blanche, change everything, because if you do, then it can be dangerous. There can be some resistance to that. So it's changing the tactical approach is always something that excites people, particularly if it's a positive approach.
What would you be thinking this morning if you're reading that headline saying Munster are closing in on Larkham, if you were a Munster player right now?
Well, I'd be excited by it. I think the Munster fans would be excited by it. You know, I mentioned the other day and before about Stephen Larkham, the way he played and his approach to the game, and the skills he possessed and you know, the quality he had as a player. I know he's got to back that up now as a coach, but you just think if someone like, you know, Tyler Blaindale, Jay Johann and Joey Carberry, they're getting an absolute legend of international rugby, to get one-on-ones with them and to talk to them about their positional sense, you know, full-backs, wingers, centres, just lines of running, all that kind of stuff. So he's got to implement that. Good players don't necessarily make brilliant coaches, but I think he has experience with the Brumbies, with Australia, and back with the Brumbies now. So I think it would excite people, you know, definitely. And Graham Rowntree as well. I think you're bringing in a huge amount of experience there and a real presence. So
is Larkham definitely happening?
That's what my source is telling me anyway. In the paper, you know, the Indo, I think they've been on it. Keane Tracy's been on this for a bit now, and I checked it with a couple of people yesterday as well, and that's what I'm being told anyway.
It's a young family that he's shipping over, and like, it's a big commitment, obviously, that it's not the sort of thing you do for a year. Like, it's, this could be a few years thing if it all works out, and he's well got, like you're saying just there, that there probably would have been a number of. He's currently employed by Rugby Australia, obviously, and
and
some sort of development role.
Yeah, and I think he's look, I presume he's not, parting ways with Michael Cheika is probably not ideal. And this is probably just going to reinvent him a little bit again, and maybe reinvent
Munster, Quinny. Like, what do you think? Because they obviously need to come in for a bit of heat last year in terms of the capacity to score tries in Europe, particularly.
Yeah, and I think they're a better side this year. They're a stronger side with Carberry, Matheson, Chris Farrell being back from injury. Mike Haley has come in. I think you could argue Zebo's bit of X factor sometimes is something that did unlock defences before for Munster, and maybe he that little bit of spark with his X factor stuff and his brilliance. But I think they're a side that probably disappointed towards the end of the season. In fairness, their endeavour was fantastic, and I just think there's rugby people who know what they're talking about, think that they could be better. Their attack could be better. And I think it's a collective thing right across the board. It's not just your back line. So Stephen Larkham, he'll be setting up drills and training for all the squad members. Props, second rows, back rows, being able to pass, different lines of running, offloading game, all that kind of stuff. So attack is a broad range of stuff. And then just really good execution around the first phase when the back line get it. So I think he will excite him. And it's something that Carberry missing for a few months as well. He's for the last couple of months of the season didn't help him either, but by their own admission, it's not just me saying it, I think they probably should be better in their attack right across the board. So hopefully they will be, and they may add one or two players that might, may or may not. But I think
have you any information for us?
No, I haven't. I think, look, Andre Pollard was probably a done deal about 4 months ago, and then Montpellier came in and paid him about 400,000 or 500,000 more than what the IRFU and Munster were willing to play him. He would have been an incredible signing as a 10-12, another kicking option, superb player, and he's gone to Montpellier now. So I think that, look, there's obviously a fair bit of budget probably being used up with Graham Rowntree, and if Stephen Larkham comes in now, because they would have had to pay them quite well. So it just depends on timing. I think the squad is good enough, and there's a few good young players, and we saw from the 20s the other day a few good young Munster guys who played really well against England the other night as well. We continuously talk about the Leinster conveyor belt. There's a load of Leinster guys there as well, but I'm just saying from a Munster point of view, getting some of the 20s coming through is a really important transition now for Munster, because there's been some negative talk in the last couple of years, haven't they, about their identity, and you talk about it, and guys outside the province who are now playing. But what will really excite and really give hope for the future is if you add some of these under 20 guys and they get involved, and that would be brilliant.
Is it, like, regardless of how good Felix Jones and Jerry Flannery were, is it a net gain ultimately for Munster, one way or the other? Like, there's a... Well,
it's different, and you're bringing in experience, and I think it's very, very hard and very unfair. I think what the forwards have done the last few years it's always been of pretty high standard. I think Jerry can take a lot of credit for that. He was very well got, as was Felix. Players liked him a lot, but I think it was a massive role, and if the team don't attack well, it goes straight onto Felix Jones's shoulders, and he's trying to do the kicking game, the kick retreats, the kick attack. There's a lot there. Then run the attack as well, then do individual skills with players, and by all accounts both guys were working 80 to 100 hours a week, and there's so much stuff that you've got to cover right across the board. So maybe that's where he was probably let down, that somebody wasn't got sooner here. And unfortunately, neither of them could agree contracts, or didn't want the extensions, or whatever the case may be. And it's a pity, because I think they're two fantastic young coaches that I hope get involved and stay involved in the game, and maybe come back at some stage. Maybe need to freshen up for their own psychology, for their own heads themselves. But I think them leaving is not a sign that they're poor coaches. I think they're brilliant coaches, but I think maybe, you know yourself, Adrian, and this is always more difficult. You know, being involved with your home province and your own team sometimes is the most difficult job in the world, because there's extra pressure, extra scrutiny, and maybe, you know, the template. I know few coaches have bucked the trend, but maybe the template is to kind of go away for coaches, spend a bit of time in France and try and come back. Look at O'Gara, what he's doing. Mike Prendergast is doing it in France as well. Mark McCall. There's loads of Irish coaches abroad, but you know, maybe that's what the boys need now themselves, Jerry and Felix, to, if they want to continue coaching, maybe take a little bit of time out, obviously, and go somewhere else and come back, because I hope they're not lost to the system, because they're two brilliant guys. I played with both of them for a long time. They're brilliant fellas, and I believe, and I've been told that they were very highly sought after, and a lot of the players had brilliant time from.
That way, yeah.
Does it not seem that the best way for someone in that position to learn would be to actually work with someone like Graham Rowntree, or to work with someone like Stephen Larkham, if Stephen Larkham is as good as he's made out to be? Do you not think Jerry Flannery would learn huge amounts from working with a Lions coach?
Yeah, I'm sure he would, but I think Jerry's his own man as well, and he's been there for a couple of years now, and was doing a lot of brilliant work with the forwards. So for whatever reason, we don't know the exact circumstances, there was contracts offered. They obviously weren't where Jerry wanted it or Felix wanted it. So that's just the nature of the business. The same as a player, you get offered X, you want Y, you don't meet in the middle, and that's it. It doesn't work. So would Jerry want to stay and work with, you know,
it's a tricky one for sure.
Probably not. If it happened a couple of years ago, but you know, when Axel was there, and he would have been working a lot with the forwards and Rassi Erasmus, and I think the coaching structure was more supportive, and there was more numbers and more bodies when they made that change with the director of rugby coming in. So you know, they've reached a point where the change has happened, and maybe the change is a good thing. Who knows? We'll see. But if Stephen Larkham and Graham Rowntree, if the forwards aren't going well or the backs aren't going well, you know, the Munster fans will ask the same questions, and we will as well. So that's just the nature of high pressurised sporting environments, where particularly as a professional, as you're getting paid, they're getting decent money now, and they've got to deliver change, improvements, whatever the case may be.
Not too much, hopefully. You know, I always get the bitter word in when you know that.
Where we move away
from
politics.
Good. I think it's good, because someone like Larkham, it's amazing. Like, you look at the way, you know, the transition from some of our provincial coaches, the way they've moved up. I've always wanted Irish coaches, but you know, the way they've moved up, and you know, Joe Schmidt moved up to Ireland. You know, Cheika was successful, Tony McGann was successful, Alan Gaffney. Loads of provincial coaches, because they're good jobs, they're big jobs. Someone like Larkham could be in the system for years. Who knows? You know what I mean? If he's successful, so they're big names to get. So I think that's important.
Best of luck to them, Quinny. Thanks a million. Enjoyed that. Cheers. Coming up.